Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin. Gordon Parks, Andrew Smith and Alison McConnell are here with me to talk football domestically and slightly further afield. If you do enjoy the chat, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel, and if you download the app, you get all that breaking news at your fingertips as well. We'll be talking Philippe Clement. He had a discussion with a number of Rangers fans about the way forward at Ibrox. We'll discuss Celtic and their Champions League campaign coming up. Can Brendan Rodgers finally deliver a little bit of success that the Celtic fans are craving? Ian Gordon's been speaking about the future for Hibs. There's a 5-year plan on the way. We'll have a look at that. And with Harry Kane getting his 100th cap and scoring 2 goals as well, is he part of a squad that, with the right manager, could finally make that next step to get success for England? And as ever with Alison McConnell, we always like the top 5, so we thought we'd have the top 5 most skillful English players, which has just been released in a poll. Exactly, he's in there, right? He's in there. He's in there right away. Well done, Andrew. You see,
Gascoigne.
Yeah, absolutely. Try not to ruin it.
Sorry.
Anyway, he's nailed 2 of them. I wonder if you can get the other 3. Let's talk Rangers. Philippe Clement. We've been assessing on a week-by-week basis overall, Alison, his comments. If it doesn't go according to plan, you lose something like an Old Firm derby, then people get more and more critical of you as a manager. But he was chatting to a number of people at a Rangers charity foundation. Lots of Rangers fans want to ask him questions, and he's basically trying to get over the message that there needs to be patience. He's going over it again and again. They've had to cut the budgets significantly since the Michael Beale era.
Yeah, I'm not sure we heard anything new last night that we've not heard across the opening few weeks of the campaign and over the summer from Philippe Clement. I think he's been very vocal about the challenges of lowering the wage bill while trying to bring in reinforcements about an appeal for patience. I'll go back. I think the reality and the theory of patience are 2 very different things. I think you can stand back and assess things in the cold light of day and see that there's a very clear chasm on and off the pitch between Celtic and Rangers, and say we need to have a long-term strategy in terms of bridging that gap. But when you're sucking it up day to day and week by week in your 5 games against Celtic without a win, I think the noise and the reality of that, it can be very hard to stomach, certainly for Rangers fans who, you have to remember, up until very recently, maybe up until basically the turn of the millennium, we're used to a diet of continual success. And I think this idea of having to be patient is very difficult when it comes to reality.
Well, if I can take us away from reality and ask you, Gordon, to suddenly put yourself in Philippe Clement's shoes. Now, this is a difficult situation because think about it from your own point of view. You are brought into a job where there have been numerous mistakes. Recruitment-wise, they've been very critical of Rangers recruitment, and overall you have to cut the budget, you have to get high earners out the door, and you want to change that side. Can you put yourself in his shoes and understand the narrative that he has to try and get across?
I sympathise with him because it's what he's inherited. It's the poverty of player that he's had, and let's not forget, and people kind of camouflage the fact, they have the biggest wage bill in the country. A club that's pleading for patience with that kind of turnover, it doesn't equate to me. And I think he's in the wrong city if he thinks that patience is going to wash, because it just doesn't. And I think you're already getting a kind of sense that Rangers fans are giving up on him. If I was the manager, I would have to make sure that the players that are coming in are making Rangers better. And I don't see that. I just think he had to, when he first came in, articulate, he seemed to have a sense of what was required. And he's now seeming increasingly desperate because, again, the evidence of the players he's bringing in, and again on good money, aren't good enough.
Is the overall problem, though, Andrew, that you go through various managers? I thought their biggest mistake was Michael Beale, but that's not Michael Beale's fault. I think the board that was making decisions is where I think the real problems lie. And you can go back to, boards before all the way back to 2012, but dealing with the immediate future of the last 2 or 3 years, they've made, some decisions which really have had a detrimental effect on not only off the field but on the field.
And I'm no wise after the event. I agree with you entirely. I could not understand the Michael Beale decision. But when it comes to Clement now, he wasn't pleading patience. I was there the day that his arrival, his first press conference. He didn't plead patience then. He didn't plead patience 2 months later when he won the League Cup. What he said that day was, "We will win the league." Now he's almost given up on it, and that's not acceptable. And it's also not something you can tolerate as a supporter, because when you have a good first 4, 5, 6 months, then you set the bar yourself. You set the parameters, you set the standard, and then suddenly it's just fallen off a cliff thereafter. What is it, 6 wins in 22? This is why he's wanting patience now, but he didn't ask for it initially.
See that point Andrew makes? I think you were there when we went before the League Cup final, the day before.
Yeah.
And the rhetoric he was coming out with was far different from
Oh,
what it is
because
now.
we were all
But
going,
back to it,
oh.
It's not as if his hands have been cut off. If you asked if I was Clement, how would I feel? I would feel as if I've come to a city here, I've come to a club which is dysfunctional, doesn't have a chief exec. There's calamities taking place with the stadium. I now realise that I'm a drowning man, and I don't have, and I'm trying to paper over the cracks by saying things that are going to try and wash. Thrown at it, patience.
Yeah.
Patience is a word.
Patience is a word that all managers that are drowning like use.
Yeah.
It's only patience as as you disappear under the briny.
Yeah.
You know.
His CV suggests that he should have a contact, a recruitment eye that he's bringing in. Maybe Monaco. You don't get the Monaco job unless you can manage. You also don't get the Monaco job unless you can recruit. He's proven that he's been a decent manager. Where are the players?
Yeah.
Where are these players that are coming to make them better? His recruitment is still failing.
Yeah. Do you know what damns Rangers? You know what damned Rangers in that game against Celtic? 10 of Celtic's starting 11 cost less than Diamande. 10 of that starting 11. Therefore, most of Celtic's players are in Rangers. Until the Celtic bench wasn't within Rangers' kind of financial gift. But the starting 11, the 1.4 Hitatis, you know, even the 3 million Taylors, like most of them are in that bracket. But they're nowhere near it.
See, if you told me in the summer, 3 months ago, that Cyril Dessers would still be leading the Rangers attack, I wouldn't have believed you. A manager that realises his reputation is going down and down and down is going with tried and tested failures.
Okay, what about the line that I think he put out to the Rangers fans, which is 7 players left for nothing, while the players coming in cost money? I mean, he had to get the Goldsons and Cantwell and these people off the books.
That, though, is gross mismanagement in terms of the club itself. You should never be in a position where you're allowing that to happen. It's insane, and you're seeing the same thing just now too with Yanis Hadji sitting in the reserves, going and playing for his country this week, playing well, making an impact. A guy who's been very well paid by Rangers, and you're not utilising those talents. That for me is a collective around the club where you're sleepwalking to financial disaster. You have to manage these situations accordingly. You have to have a long-term strategy where you know people's contracts are coming up. You cash in on them as and when you should, as dare you say it, the way that Celtic have done.
In fairness
ran
to
a
Clement,
business,
he said that when they signed Diamande, he says this has to work. You know, these kind of buying promising talents and brushing
That's
them up.
not a manager's jurisdiction. All of that's not on the manager for me. That comes down to your financial guys at the club and saying this is what you've got to do.
If you go back to the Morelos and Kent, £30 million potentially didn't come into the club.
Yeah.
You imagine if you're in charge of a business and you had to explain that to your boss.
Yeah, but a lot of that as well was a board that was run by, and to an extent, John Bennett has tried to not necessarily clear out the Rangers fans who are on the board, because the 5 people who are the major investors all are fanatical Rangers fans. But
and they've all put money in.
They've all put their own money in. But of the deals that have been done and the deals that should have been done, Morelos is the case in point, and Ryan Kent, they were driven by that being a fan who thinks, we can't sell them because it will gift Celtic the league.
I know.
They get caught up in that rather than looking at it as a
stop
business
the 10.
view.
Got to stop the 10. I mean, Bennett says all the right things, and I think he's trying to do the right things. I think he is genuinely an adult in the room. But the problem was, Rangers almost front-loaded. They spent 100 million to win the league of other people's money. So now they have to pay it back. And paying it back means they just have to lower they have to lower the wage base. They have to lower their outgoings. And what that does is it rubbles their competitiveness.
Yeah.
When Celtic are actually pushing the other way. So we're just seeing this differential just becoming wider and wider.
Andrew, Celtic haven't spent fortunes to assemble the team that they've got. That's also a myth.
Well, they've taken in 11
No, but I
million
mean,
pounds.
Celtic have spent 34 million this calendar year, right?
Yep.
That's the most in Celtic's entire history in a calendar year. So they're spending decent money now.
Yeah, but they've also taken in money.
Spent 30. They've
brought-
brought in 37. so
Overall,
what-
overall the
Sustainable.
balance.
Yeah,
It's
what-
the same sustainability
Yeah.
model that they've utilised.
Incredible! It's
Yeah.
incredible.
The one key, and I was reading the Greg Stewart interview in the Record, where basically he said, you know, there was a point where Steven Gerrard, when he was in charge, was looking and saying, listen, we've won the league. Now's the time to push on. The catchphrase that Greg Stewart was told by Gerrard was, you know, when the sun is shining, that's when you have to fix the roof. He wanted two quality players, and I don't think at that point they were able to back his ambition of taking it on to another level. And
They can't.
They caught out.
But this is, it's like Souness and they need spend 50 million in the midfield and all that. What is all this baloney? You know, they don't have 50 million. They didn't have the money that they've spent on the players that they've got. You know, you've got to pay, like ultimately you've got to pay the piper.
Also, too, if you look at the financial fair play regulations that are going to come in, you're not going to be able to go and take 4 players for 50 million. You're going to have to be able to prove that you're a sustainable business, that you can buy and sell and offset, that
Here's
you
a
can,
story
you
for the
can
summer,
stay on
Alison.
a level playing
John
field.
Fleck goes into train with Rangers for a week. Now, John Fleck's just come out of playing in the Premiership in England, Premier League, and he would play for Rangers for buttons, basically, right, in relative terms. He's also ticks in the box for being an academy graduate for the home base thing. Simple decision was to give John Fleck a contract, to me. Again, it's bringing the wage down. You're getting an experienced voice within the dressing room.
But I think you make a rod for your own back with doing something like that on the basis that they can't even resolve the Hadji situation.
I know.
You can't. The boy who plays maybe one more game, and the talk is that his wages will increase maybe £6,000 a week. But the point is, you can't be seen to go elsewhere when the Rangers fans will suddenly say, if John Fleck doesn't make the difference and you've got a Romanian internationalist there who's sitting, he's still taking a good wage.
Yeah.
So
He'd
they've
a
made a rod-
very good Euros. He had a very good Euros. I watched though.
Yeah.
I mean, his
But they've
game.
made a
I was
rod for
well
their own
impressed.
back with
And
that.
people forget that Hadji's role in that run to the Europa League final. He had a really important role in that. He was a bit kind of hit and miss.
The point I'm making is, the summer they should have gone and done this obvious thing. Shankland should have been brought in. There are obvious decisions that should be made. Overcomplicating things, we're bringing in this and that from that and throwing. Go with a bit of certainty. Stabilise things.
Obviously, there's, you know, I sometimes treat with scepticism anything that comes out of you know, this guy's a great player, that guy's a great player. You only judge it when you actually get to see them.
Yeah.
There was a nice little line from Silvino, the Albania manager, saying Barami, who they've signed, had a good game.
Oh, I heard that.
So I think you've got to deal with the here and now, Andrew, and Rangers are just going to have to somehow lick their wounds, forget about it. I don't see, and this is where I think the key element of how we come to an end of this discussion on the Rangers manager's narrative and his discussions with the fans, I don't see Rangers looking to go through managers. They've given him an extension, so they're going to have to buy into it.
At one
If
point,
anything,
you have
there's going to be pain.
At one point, you have to kind of stop that kind of carousel, that managerial carousel. You know, you have to get off, you know, and the Rangers have to get off right now. And they've thought, well, we're getting off with a guy who we think is the best manager we've had, and his record would suggest that. But maybe he's still not the right guy. That's the problem.
Well, sometimes,
scary.
Sometimes, by the way, and I would only counter that statement by saying that at times you can be the best boxer in the ring, but if all the elements are not there to help you, you know what I mean? Suddenly you can get found out, and he's up against a money machine with, for me, the best coach in the country. So that's the big dilemma for him. You're saying to yourself, you're going to have to watch your budget. You're going to have to duck and dive with a few players here and there. And by the way, your greatest competitor has just brought back the best coach, and he's been over the course before. And as Andrew mentioned, we're going to give him 30 odd million.
Yeah, and the other factor too that I think you can't overlook is pressure. Like where Celtic are confident, assured, it's been a very fluent start to the campaign. There's pressure at Rangers immediately. There was pressure from the off when they didn't win the Scottish Cup last season. You knew that first meeting, that first derby a couple of weeks ago would have all eyes on it. So when you go 5 games without a win against one of your rivals, I think there's a wave of pressure that you suddenly find yourself, you're trying to bat away repeatedly. And all it would take is a poor result this weekend. I think Rangers are at Tannadice on Sunday against Jim Goodwin's side, who have started very well. You think if you don't come away from that with a very strong showing and a win, then all these questions, all that pressure, it just intensifies. You've got no credit in the bank.
You're forever walking a tightrope and just hoping that you don't slide off. You know, like your one foot doesn't slide off. That's where Rangers are at. And when Celtic and Rangers find themselves in that position, inevitably they do fall off.
I don't think anybody thinks that Rangers are going to win the league this year. No. That's the first thing. But the second thing, where I think
they'd have to be a good second.
Well, they'd have to be a good second. But the other thing about it, which I think buys the manager credit in the bank, will be Malmo, Lyon, Steaua Bucharest, these Olympiacos. Rangers in the last 5 years, Gordon, but Rangers in the last 5 years have been the only club really flying the flag. And when things have not been going well, the European results have galvanised the support. So that's where I think he's got to try and buy some kind of credibility.
He's got to try. I just don't think they're good enough to do it.
I'll tell you one thing, and that's the only thing I would pick up on what Gordon said there. It's the one line that he's said that I think could come back to haunt him. You know, we'll see in January. You know, he's almost said by time. I think he needs the time. I think John Bennett, before the Old Firm game, came out and said the right things about the need to change Rangers to a long-term strategy. But the last thing you need is suddenly after a defeat is the manager saying, we'll see you in January. And the 2nd of January, it's the one line that I thought, you're really putting yourself under pressure now.
It's like Blazing Saddles, you know, when he holds the gun to his own head and says, you know, if you don't do this, then I'm going to fire. He seems to be like that boy in Blazing Saddles.
And by the way, for the benefit of people of a certain age, Blazing Saddles is a real. How would you sum it up? It's of our generation.
I don't know that you know the political and kind of cultural sensitivities are maybe not like included within Blazing Saddles.
Do you know I watched that movie? I kid you not, I hate to digress, but I might as well tell you. I watched that movie about maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and I'd been caught up in the nostalgia of it, right? I thought, you know, because I love the beans section when they're all sitting around eating beans, and for the benefit of anybody who hasn't seen it, watch it. But as I sat there and I thought, that's not PC. Ooh, that needs to be cut from this movie. And then I actually thought to myself, exactly. And then I actually thought to myself, Andrew, this movie is Mel Brooks is a genius at it. But I actually thought to myself, I think I was 16 when that movie came out, and I absolutely got the humour then. You know, because he made you, because Mel Brooks, a classic Jewish person who likes to kind of self-deprecating, throw humour out there on everybody's religion and race and things like that. It was of its time. Completely
it's incredible
crazy.
though when you like you don't realise your part and you're living through a cultural change until you go back and watch something like that, and you think. You take a kind of sharp
absolutely.
Only Fools and Horses, hasn't it become that kind of territory?
Wayne's World. I watched Wayne's World 2 weeks ago, and it's like I thought this will be brilliant, this will be great, and it's like, oh my God, they're stalking a woman. They're openly stalking a woman. You know, it's like I was melting in my seat.
Yeah, you're ruining that movie for me now, Andrew. They're only trying to put a concert on, for God's sake. Anyway, how we managed to get blazing saddles, I'll
Sorry.
never know. But it's still good. It's still good.
Thank God we haven't had the beans, because that might
Exactly.
might work too well in the show.
It just shows you how childish the type of movie that I used to love watching. And on the flip
Wait
side,
till we get them back to our place.
Yeah.
Wait till we get them back to our place.
I think on that point alone, I think he will be given the time, barring, of course, and I get where you're coming from, Gordon, barring, of course, you know, some kind of hiccup along the way that nobody would tolerate. You know, going into January the 2nd, I think Europe's important, but the teams that you'd expect them to win, they want to see them win. Just on that point, on the flip side of it, suddenly one of my mates sent me a text, excuse me, the other day there, and he said he did what I call a classic Hugh Keevins. Ooh. He just sent me a text and he goes, I've been having a look at the Celtic games in the Champions League. and I started, I thought, I really want to read this text. And he said, 3 points against Slovan Bratislava, lose to Borussia Dortmund, maybe lose to Atlanta, point at home against Leipzig, win against Bruges, maybe a point away from home against Zagreb, definitely beat Young Boys, and then lose to Villa. And he had it at 13 points.
Is that 13 points?
It was more or less.
Yeah.
He had it at 13.
I did 11, and maybe
Does it not take 15?
No, they say. I think they say. I think 11 would probably get you in the top 20.
I suppose it's going to depend how everything.
Top 26, sorry.
Yeah.
Like how other teams would.
Because we don't really know, because we don't know how people approach it. We don't know what it'll be like. Teams only playing each other once. You know, how the big teams will react. Whether the big teams will just, if they think they're, home and hosed, will they start to play?
Do you like the format?
I do. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's really refreshing. It's really refreshing. It's a kind of, it's both a cup and a league. It's a hybrid.
Yeah.
It's a hybrid, really, because you're essentially playing cup ties.
Yeah, I like the
ties.
format. I think it's tried to get a little bit of the historic value of the old European Cup,
Yeah.
and then obviously retain that group stage feel of can you get to the knockout stage. I personally, I don't know if you agree with me, Gordon, I think this is Celtic's best chance in a long while to get to at least a knockout game.
Completely agree. Again, can they hit the bar? Because there's some quality there. Can they get to that level? They're probably short of that. But there's winnable games. You can see, I think, I take your pal's text message point. Theoretically, that's achievable. That's what the common sense belief would be. History would suggest it's not realistic. Celtic haven't backed it up. They've never, certainly for how many years now do we go back? It's a story of failure after failure. And Brendan Rodgers is getting paid a lot of money now to make an impact. So I think the focus has to be on these games more so than any other.
Yeah,
This is what it matters.
I think the most important question that any journalist worth his salt had to ask him after the window had closed was quite simply, are you happy with that transfer window, and do you feel as if you have the ammunition to deliver what you were brought back for? Nothing else. I mean, at the end of the day, the start to the season, the pre-season, fine. The start to the season, Celtic have looked like a really good team, and they look like a well-oiled machine even before the new signings come in. But now you're saying, for me, I'm just looking and saying, I'm not going to get involved in the rhetoric of the early stages of the Scottish Premiership. This is what you were brought back for. This is where everybody's going to start to judge, can your team play European football and can you take scalps?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Celtic fans will look at the group and feel as though there's winnable games within it. I think there'll be cause for optimism when you look at the group, and the fact that you've not got, it's a slightly different format, that you've not got the two-pronged home and away tie. I think that maybe augurs well in terms of banking points it would see you through. I think certainly what you'd want to see is Celtic Park going back to what it was before in a European sense. If you make it a difficult venue to go to, and I don't think that comes from being atmospheric and noisy, and I think all that's passé, it's a cliche that affects good players. I think supporters love it and buy into it. However, what makes it difficult is Celtic just being difficult to beat and break down on their own turf. And what you've seen is an undoing with cheap goals at points in recent European campaigns. Some really sobering defeats on the road. You think like that Brendan Rodgers would have overseen, like some of those really, 6-0, 7-0s on the
Record
radio.
defeat, yeah.
Record
And by the
defeats.
way, if
you
I'm gonna
need to get away, you need to be competitive in this arena.
If I'm going to flip it, and I take your point, if I'm going to flip it to some of the memes and all the little Twitter accounts that go in when they're laughing about Rangers and Celtic when they come together, in the comments that a manager will make, and then the Celtic fans or the Rangers fans try and ram it back down their throat.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was summing up Celtic's Champions League, I will, in the Ange Postecoglou era, well done, you won the 60-minute cup.
Exactly.
Until Real Madrid then battered you.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And that is the nature of it. He has to, as Alison said, suddenly get to a situation, yes, we can play intelligent football, yes, we can keep it tight at the back, but going forward, we can break you down, score, and hold on to it.
But in all those points, this will be Celtic's 13th Champions League campaign. They have never won the opening game in a Champions League group campaign. Slovan Bratislava, first timers in the Champions League at Celtic Park. And actually Celtic are on their longest run in 10 years, undefeated in 2 games. So they haven't lost in the last 2 games at home in the Champions League, which is unheard of in a decade. That tells you how far they've fallen.
Yeah.
My God, if Celtic don't win next Wednesday, the jig is up already, I would say.
Yeah. As crucial as that?
As crucial as that. I think that if they can't win that game against Champions League first-timers at home on the opening night, in the form they're in, they're screwed. I'm beginning to sound like Hugh Keevins. What the hell's happening to me?
No, what's great about it is that little soundbite that you've given us there has taken the heat off Parsley.
Oh no! Oh no!
because quite simply, I agree with you. But you look at it and you say to yourself, of the deals that he's made, I genuinely think he's one short. And I'll tell you right now, he's a striker short for me.
He's a centre-half shot as well, with height.
Well,
I think the striker situation's hard. I think it's really hard to have 3 strikers at a club when you only play with one up front. I think it's really difficult to keep 3 first team strikers happy.
But do you want me to tell you something? That is the job of a manager. The job of a manager is to make sure that you've got competition in key areas that you can change the outcome of a game. And if Kyogo's shoulder goes out, they've got Ida. Ida is, for me, a one-dimensional style player.
Yeah.
He's not somebody who's suddenly going to be able to hold it in, turn a player, suddenly make that darting run the way Kyogo does off the shoulder. I don't see that in him. The boy is one of the... Do you know what he is, Parsi?
Yeah.
He's a Brendan Rodgers project where Brendan Rodgers can make him a better player. But
I think
right
Miovski-
now...
What
Miovski
achieves success,
should have been
right?
signed. Miovski was
Well, that's another straightforward decision. What achieves success in Europe ultimately is class, because it's a higher class. And have Celtic got that class in the forward areas?
I think
What
they have.
achieve?
And Kyogo they have.
Listen, they have, right?
They have in Kyogo. They have in Kyogo. See,
Well, there's got
his
one-dimensional
goals.
footballers.
Are they a
up front.
striker short?
Probably, but somebody with that bit of je ne sais quoi that can do the different.
Je ne sais what?
Yeah. He played
Did he not play
he
for
played for Cannes, he
Nice?
moved on.
Sign him.
But by the way, on that point, you said they haven't got a centre-half.
I think they lack a physical, a real height, basically.
Yeah, well, we've got to wait and see. I always say you wait till you see.
Post, because nobody's gone and shown that authority.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Scales and Carter Vickers are good, but again, can they get to that class level to go and... I doubt it.
Let me ask you this: Alison, Engels, Ida, McCowan, Bernardo, Schmeichel, Sinisalo's a backup goalkeeper, Trusty and Val. Have I missed anybody?
No.
That's your signings.
It's quite a coterie there.
Yeah.
A coterie?
Yeah.
He played for Monaco.
The only thing missing in this show is Arsene Wenger. But are you looking at that and saying he's got enough then in your mind
I think he should have enough. I think he should.
to qualify for a knockout? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he should.
You're happy with that?
Listen, I think if you asked any manager or any supporter, they would always want another one. They would always say, I could do with 1 or 2 more coming in. But I think if you look at the guts of the squad, if you look at the spine of the squad, I do think it should be sufficient.
The problem is none of these guys. Well, Bernardo was excellent against Rangers. I think people have underestimated Bernardo because he kind of
Because you're there already too.
yeah,
I
and
think,
because
like,
his form maybe dipped a little
yeah.
bit, and it was his first season really playing in that kind of rough and tumble of Scottish football. But I think he could be the coming man.
One of the problems Celtic have as well is, and it's come back to your point about the stadium and the atmosphere and all that, it's a theatre, Celtic Park now, and it's so renowned, and you've got Messi celebrating it and people talking about it. You're right, opposition teams now come and relish in playing at Celtic Park. Where else would you want
The other aspect to that, though, is that if Celtic lose a goal early, it goes silent.
Oh yeah,
It becomes like a sponsored silence. It can become mute.
I actually, you know, the one thing about sitting in the press box, watching the Champions League theme kicking in and the ball boys starting to quickly move the Champions League emblem. The noise is incredible. There is a moment when the noise just goes crazy. But at that point, I remember looking over at Kroos and Modric, and the two of them looked at each other and they had a wry smile, you know, as if to say, they almost said exactly the same as Rio Ferdinand said when he was in the lineup. We'll have a bit of this.
exactly.
And the difference is, after the half hour, once they silence the crowd, then they go and play the usual game and enjoy the whole stadium and the theatre of it. Now what he has to do, and I agree with you, you know, at times it's like Scotland against Poland. That game was there for the taking in a group where I think we're going to finish bottom, because you've got to look at games and think that's a winnable game. We must win it.
You must win it. I know.
And for Scotland, they blew that. For Celtic, they've got to say Slovan
Your
Bratislava.
pal's done what every other Celtic fan's done. They've basically looked at what's achievable, right? What's a realistic goal. But again, Alison, you're optimistic. The evidence there, the history isn't there to be.
I would agree with you. The question was, do you think he's got enough? I do think when you look at the squad, if you get more than the sum of the parts out of what you've got in terms of coaching, you should. Whether or not I think they will go and do it is another matter. For the reasons that you've said as well, I think.
Actually, if you can clip this with the other bit, because I'll be getting on the stick, I actually think they will win, not only win next Wednesday, I think they actually will win well.
Yeah.
I think they will win well. It's very hard to judge Celtic right now because they're so far ahead.
Yeah,
and I know it was like they were 2 weeks ahead of these English teams, but there is something about the kind of the whole kind of mechanics of it just feels like such a kind of.
I think it feels so different from this time last season, in that you sense there's a unity again about Celtic, a cohesiveness that wasn't there at this point 12 months ago.
Also with the supporters.
That's what I mean. Even the rancour that was there still this time a year ago has dissipated, and that comes just from winning. Win things and people.
You can tell the players are enjoying playing, and the supporters are enjoying watching the players enjoying playing.
Yeah. The only thing I would counter it with is a mixture of everybody's opinion on it is quite simply the more educated Celtic fan is holding off on this PR spin. They're looking and saying, okay, you've actually said, oh, there's been a good transfer window. Okay, the manager's come out and said, finally, he's happy with what he's got. They'll wait and say, right, let's see the Slovan Bratislava. Let's see the home games against Bruges. Let's see Leipzig. The proof is in the pudding. And I always say, August to December is when the real critic comes out and looks and said, by the way, you've spun this. Here's the reality.
Proving ground.
Yes.
Isn't Scottish football. It's not the Scottish Premiership, it's dross, right? They're competing against bang average, really mediocre.
Yeah.
Can they step up?
Here's the next
Do they even, and the step up isn't quite the same step up, because this expanded Champions League is essentially, it's tacked on a bit of the Europa League. That's essentially what's happened.
Yeah.
I mean, Bratislava, young boys,
But
Zagreb,
the Celtics of the world needed that.
Exactly.
Because they're a Europa League team at best.
Exactly. But they only need to be a Europa League team with the 8 games effectively.
Yeah.
They only need to be a good Europa League team to get into the playoffs of the Champions League now.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, time will tell, as it does, as we started with Philippe Clement. We're about to find out. Brendan Rodgers' judgment days will come in the Champions League, and we'll find out how they fare. Give us your thoughts on it. The comment section below is always good. And if you actually have the app, if you go to the contact section, you can actually record a video and give us a chance to see what you look like, and if you want to back up your opinion, we'd love to hear from you. Which brings me nicely to, of course, Hibs. suddenly you're in a situation where, you know, the madness of Scottish football is everybody says a manager's under pressure here, there and everywhere. Ian Gordon decided to do an interview with Luke Shanley at Sky Sports. Luke's a good lad. It did actually have that feel as if he was grilling him, and if he got any questions wrong, he was going to jail. You know, Luke was mega serious about it, but nevertheless...
Don't let the cat out of the bag, but is Luke not a Hibs fan?
Well,
Yes,
of course he's a Hibs fan, but the thing about it is, and I always counter anybody who, you know, I don't mind people being fans, but when you're a journalist, go in there and ask the questions. You can be a fan of any club whatsoever, but if you're a professional in our game, you know, you can't sit there and start pandering to people. If you pander, you're gone. So I thought from Luke's point of view, he was asking a lot of really pertinent, good questions. Good lad. Ian Gordon himself was open enough to admit that he's made mistakes. He shouldn't have been the guy recruiting players. They've made mistakes along the way, and he's held his hands up about it. But one thing I think they are getting really, it's looking really good for them, is the commercial side of things. They're starting to stack up the cash because the hospitality is good at every level. You know, they've got the big jumbo screens in. They're starting to really listen to the fans. They've got this new standing section, which is something we're going to cover at the weekend against St Johnstone. So they're responding to that. No, we're filming it. but it's good to see they're responding to the fans, and he's open enough to say, by the way, I hold my hands up, made mistakes.
Brilliant club. From an aspect of the warmth that you feel going into it, you know that there's professionals there. The commercial team are excellent. We know who they are. They get the job done. We talk about the chalk and cheese element from other clubs. But the football matters more. And the football at the moment isn't good enough. I think Malcolm Mackay's impact and influence that the club will be felt over time. I think it's a brilliant appointment. He also is a good mentoring figure for a young manager.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how they can't put together a decent team.
It's early days, Parsley. For God's sake, man, give him time.
No, I'm saying there is
Of recent history.
green shoots of something coming through. It has to happen quick. And again, they recruit poor defenders. Whenever I watch Hibs play, I see calamity at the back, time after time.
Yeah. It is something that, you know, last year was evident, the year before was evident. You know, the one thing that you cannot have, and you talked about the carousel, my God, they're the kings of the carousel. They were sacking managers right, left and centre. I mean, Sean Maloney said to me, Pierre, I thought I was getting the sack after 4 games. But suddenly, after all the mistakes...
Stuck with Sean.
But Ian Gordon comes out and says, and this is where I think you've got to give them some credit, Andrew, he basically, led by his dad, put in a position that maybe he was not equipped for, but at least he had the guts to come out and say, okay, my dad's away, but of the decisions we made, we shouldn't have sacked Jack Ross. We shouldn't have sacked Jack Ross. I mean,
they said that.
Nonsense.
You know, that's. I think Ron even said that himself. Like, so that's been long acknowledged.
Heckingbottom goes down, gets sacked, and goes and manages in the English Premier League. A good manager, washed out quickly.
I know.
And again, we're talking about patience.
Is there something about the club? I mean,
Expectations.
I think it's really difficult to be the Hibs manager because that genuinely is one of those clubs you have to play a certain way, and this almost kind of contributes to their kind of defensive kind of calamities.
Well, I think the good narrative and the good stories that are coming out of it is quite simply that we've made mistakes. There's a sense of humility there. That's the first thing. We're going to listen. We're going to prove to you in that previous 5-year plan, this is what we're going to try and do commercially. Commercially, it's up 80%, the growth. So that's the first thing. So they're bringing in money. What he said is, as a family, we are going to write off any overspends on the football side. So they've done that. Yeah. So they've linked in with the Black Knights. So we've done that as well. You know, we are trying to give this manager the best chance based on the mistakes we've made before. You've got to give him credit.
Yeah, I think ultimately, again, though, it comes down to whatever's happening on the pitch. I think it's fantastic. Again, we speak about theories and reality. I think it's fantastic to say all of that. But if you go 3 or 4 games, go through a really hard month where you don't see any kind of progression, it becomes so difficult to stick to that. It becomes really hard to ward off the pressure of people. And then what happens when people stop coming to games? If you're not getting results and attendances start to dip, and there's real fan unrest, it becomes almost impossible not to make the change. So I think crucially, it gives a sense of transparency and stability, but the proof is in the pudding. You have to be winning games. At every club, it all comes down to whatever's happening on the pitch.
I don't know how you guys find it, but in my previous life, what we found was the engagement from Hibs fans wasn't a patch on like Hearts. It was one of our big clubs, but it was almost the engagement. There always would seem to be a kind of detachment from if you're writing about them, if you're like promoting them. You didn't quite get the same.
Didn't quite get the same what?
Reaction.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you find it. And I've spoke to other people. And it's funny that they say the commercial is up 80% because I think Hibs fans have kind of partially turned off. There might be a lot of people have just kept their season tickets on, but see when you see the actual attendance figures.
I think I take your point, right? There is a kind of listen. Hearts fans are an angry fan base a lot of the time,
But they're engaged.
But it's post-traumatic stress that they've suffered, right? Hibs haven't been through that kind of crisis, so there's a kind of Hearts are on edge. They put their money in. Clearly, they saved the club. There's an anger around the place more often than not. Hibs struggle to find that energy.
It's an interesting, and again, I have to bring it brings a smile to my face, if only for the fact that I'm not just saying because I lived there, but it's an interesting insight, listening to,
Two Ouija's.
Well, a West of
Scuzzy
a West of Scotland outlook to it because, and I'm not dismissing your point of view, and I think it's all relevant, and it's all, you're talking about angry Hearts fans, having lived there 12 years and understanding the mentality of Hearts and Hibs fans, and I regularly, which is to everybody looks and laughs, and I get pelters in our company for it, is I regularly go through to see Hearts and Hibs because all my friends, a lot of my friends are still there. I like the clubs, I like the way they're run, both of them, and I like the board and I like the people who operate within the club. So it's interesting hearing your take on it. I'm not so sure there's a detachment. I think there's less of a pressure, if I can say. There's less of a pressure from the Hibs fans because they don't have that kind of a sense of Hearts foundation. We've got a stake in this. I do agree with you because they were openly switching off to Robbie Neilson, and you knew Robbie Neilson's days were numbered, and they wanted him out. Even if he was getting good results, they were still going, I'm not convinced, and they wanted him out, and they got him out. Stevie Naismith's under a similar situation right now where I think the fan base is turning against him and he has to constantly convince them regularly. So I get where you're coming from with the angry Hearts fan aspect of it. There is an element within them that's like that they're not buying him. With Hibs, I think a lot of the kind of understanding of what they're trying to do, they've cut them a lot of slack. They've not been happy constantly sacking managers. And I think the Hibs fans have finally said, listen, get a grip here.
But it feels like Hibs fans.
So what is the expectation of a Hibs fan? They won the odd League Cup and they've won a Scottish Cup against Rangers. I mean,
my God, but at least they should be getting in the top 6.
Well, absolutely, this is it. But they keep sacking managers. So now the Hibs fans are saying, listen, you're going to have to. You're a family dynasty that's taken over the club. You're going to have to suddenly give us a plan here and give us a plan that's going to come to fruition. So suddenly I've witnessed in the last year almost a turn in their mindset to say, we can see all the changes, we like what's going on in the background, get the team on the pitch, which is what Gordon said.
Always, we go through to Hibs a lot, and the question always gets asked, can you go through the glass ceiling? And nobody wants to answer that. Can you split the old firm? They're capital city clubs, are two big massive clubs. Yeah. What is the expectation, Peter? It should be something far more than it is, the reality is at the moment.
I think it's top 4. It's like maybe that doesn't sound.
Do you know what there is though?
exciting.
Do you know what there is though? This is the one criticism I can make about Hearts and Hibs fans. Is the one thing that's still an element is, can we finish above Hearts, or can we finish above Hibs? Yeah. There's the bragging rights of that, and then
you need that. That's good old tribal.
Well, you do need tribalism, but I would like to see a situation where I agree with you. They're two big clubs, so start looking and saying, and I thought Hearts were going to get it right because I thought they'd recruited well with some of the home-based players they were buying.
Yeah, me too.
It's not working out at the moment. Hibs, on the other hand, I hope David Gray gets the time, Alison, to actually get a team out on the park. The only failing I have with them is the back line. The back line is where he should have absolutely said, let's shut it up. David Gray's a defender, for God's sake. Shut the defence up. Let's make it difficult to beat, and then we can build a team from there on in.
Yeah, it's got a really soft centre. I think anyone, particularly David Gray, I think Hibs fans themselves would be willing him to do well.
Yeah.
They want him to do well. He's got a lot of credit with the Hibs support, but
They
it
want him
runs
to
out
reach,
quickly.
They want him to reach his Babylon, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's Sir David Gray, who, if he loses any more games, will quickly lose his title. Do you know what I mean? And I quite like your gag, but nevertheless. Listen, the other thing about it is they have pushed the board out. Kieran Bowie could be a good player for them. I mean, that boy looks as if he's a wee bit better than what they've been signing. You know, and that whole one-dimensional of the last 2 or 3 years, let's hope Martin Boyle scores and creates a wee bit of magic, is no longer where they're looking, you know?
You go through the squad, they've got the Cadden boys playing together.
Yeah, good players.
Shilling Leggett, who for me is a technical player that can go and play at any midfield. You've got really good options. Martin Boyle has to lift himself again.
Yeah. The most magical thing about Martin Boyle's, how does that, where is it going, that here?
Yeah.
You know, is it here? Is it coming for here? Is it coming for there?
The thing about it, see you bald people, you're so critical. I mean, honestly, you're hairist.
he
Can
should
you be hairist?
he should be the same as me. You know, if he didn't pay 20 grand for it, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, listen,
Does he get turkey teeth as well?
listen, I've got mates of mine who suddenly come back with the best smile ever, and I'm thinking, okay, if that's what you want to do. Whereas parts of yourself, you've just decided, I'm going to go grey, and it's just going to whoosh. That was it. It happened overnight with
Rather
you.
going grey than forgive me.
No, don't.
Yeah.
Please forgive me. We're back to David Gray.
He's always suited that, by the way.
Do you not find bald men have got issues with? There's a certain bald men when they lose their
I'm
hair,
obsessed.
They lose something else.
Yeah.
Don't they?
Would you have gone for the hair transplant if you had the dosh?
No, because I'm a wuss, and apparently it's really,
Painful.
really painful.
Yes.
It's incredibly painful, I've heard.
Can I just say to you, James McFadden's wife had the best attitude, which is, listen, just shave it off and let's get on with it.
He looks fine,
He
Faddy.
looks great.
Andy
Looks
Newport,
great.
He was on the way out. He was heading into Europe.
Oh, he was.
Territory,
He
but
was.
What a thatch he's got now.
I know.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, blazing saddles to bald men. Bloody hell, where are we going? Where are we going with this programme, Ali? It's a disaster. The other
Blazing
thing,
bald men.
yes, exactly. Ali's just looking on and going, I wonder when Peter's going to actually take a grip of this show again and get it back on. And I'm going to take a grip of it now on your favourite thing, which is the England players. I was watching the game against Finland. And I actually sat there and I thought to myself, you know what? They're going to win a major. They are going to win a major. They just need a manager with the right attitude, with the talent they've got. They will win one.
They look more organised, don't they?
I think they've got some really good
yeah.
players coming through, haven't they, Ali?
Well, and when you look at them, it brings the age of the squad. It's a really exciting young team. You look at the amount of players that are coming through, 20, 21, 22, just starting out on their career. Like, it's a whole new generation that you have about to come in, supplemented with a bit of talent. You would argue that Harry Kane is world class. You know, you've got a world class player at Bellingham. I think it'll become world class. But
Foden. I mean, they've got so many, and they're now starting to produce centre backs that are no those kind of stiffs like a kind of Harry Maguire's.
Yeah.
You know, they're much more adaptable. They're kind of defensively now. That was always what I thought was going to be the saving grace if you don't want England to win a major title, was that they had a soft centre. But I don't see that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Gordon. I watched them. Okay, it becomes a bit. Sometimes it can become a little bit of a tedious watching the Finlands of the world try to hold them back, but eventually they break you down, and they break you down. Yes, they've got a world class player in Harry Kane. The others are on the periphery of it. I think Foden's the closest with Bellingham. Those two, they're not quite world class for me, because quite simply, you know, if we have to listen to English journalists and their appraisal of, you know, world class, then they've got about 19 of them. But I think Bellingham, I've watched him in the Champions League final. I watched him in the Euros. I think there's another wee step up he's got to make this season.
Definitely.
Big season for him.
The two best back-to-goal strikers in the world for me are Lewandowski and Kane. I think they take the ball so well.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the elements. Foden only going to get better. England will win something with Bellingham. Bellingham's going to be the best, one of the, if not the best player in the world when he hits mid-20s.
But they've got to be the only nation I know with all that quality at their disposal. Lee Carsley goes into a press conference and they say, you call Ben White.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? If I was Lee Carsley, I'd be turning around going, who cares? Doesn't want to play for England. I'm only interested in guys that want to wear the shirt.
Exactly.
I'm the same with Scotland. See, as soon as somebody pulls out.
Would you give him the job? Do you think he'll get the job?
No, after he didn't sing the national anthem, I don't think.
I think he'll get the job. I think he'll get the job.
Why do you think he'll get the job?
Well, because I think they're of that mindset now where they're looking and saying, our academy is producing great players. The structure's right. He's gone through the stages with them. And I think they're looking and saying to themselves, let's give it to someone who agrees with the structure, who buys into the ethos, and then let's see if he's the final missing part of the jigsaw, which is take away the element of caution of Gareth Southgate, let them go. Let these guys spread their wings and go and take on players, and they've got players that can beat players. So I think Carsley is that link that they'll give him the job.
I think he
Do you
could
know
be a
what?
good choice.
I'm more convinced now having listened to you there.
Yeah, you've presented a good case.
Truly,
Yeah.
truly, I think you're right. That generation of quality that's coming through has to be brought to fruition.
And that brings me nicely to, of all the failed generations, the golden generations that they duped us into believing were eventually going to win a trophy, there's various polls that came out, and I read this one, which was the top 5 most skillful English players in this poll. Now, I have to say, you've got to try and, when you put these polls together, remember that you could ask 100 people and the majority of them were born 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So you've got to get a sense of perspective on it. Yes.
Recency effect.
But
Don't tell us they put in Beckham or something.
he's in the top 10. And give me the 5.
We're talking about skill.
Most skillful players.
Letizia has to be on that list.
Letizia is in the top 5.
I think if you're showing a kind of montage of clips, does anybody get any better than Matt Letizia's goals?
But I did actually say to him, I met him at a dinner one night, and I said to him, by the way, I said, your video, your DVD is in bookshops now at a £5. And I don't know many people could buy a DVD for a £5 with like 30, 40, 50 wonder goals on either foot from him. He was an absolute genius as a player. So he's in the top 5
Right.
on football. He's in the top 5.
Right. Again, you'll be able to help me out.
Right.
What his name is.
Yeah.
Played late 70s, went to America, was George Best's pal. Was he
Rodney Marsh.
Yes.
He's not in it.
Is he not?
No, but it's a good shout. Rodney Marsh is a good player.
Frank Worthington, is he in it?
Frank Worthington's a great player.
Oh, I interviewed him once.
He's not in it. He's not in it.
John Barnes.
John Barnes is in it.
John Barnes?
John Barnes.
Right.
John Barnes was class.
Fantastic. His goal against
John Barnes,
Brazil in the Maracana.
Yeah.
And I already gave you Hoddle and Gascoigne, didn't I?
Yes. Yes.
So how are we doing here?
There's one
then?
left. You've named them all apart from one. There's one.
What era?
Bobby Charlton?
Well, Bobby Charlton's not in. They're looking at skillful, as in someone who's got a trick.
Oh, right.
Chris Waddle.
Chris Waddle,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. That's the top. That's the top
That's not
5.
bad. That's not, in terms of,
Falkirk.
Yeah.
I've seen worse top 5s.
And I was
Competition winner.
Anyway.
Yeah, Chris Waddle, can't believe Chris Waddle at Falkirk. I mean,
yeah.
incredible. It's a great way to finish the top 5 in the poll. And again, it could have been a poll for Tudor crisps. Who cares? Gaza, number 1. Gascoigne was just magnificent. And as I always say with Gordon Strachan, let's not be holding players up as the beacon of light for how they should behave. If Letizia is under your microscope, Gaza's not exactly the best behaved person off the field, but on the field, genius.
Well, see the stick we took because I was in the SFA Hall of Fame judging panel. See the stick we took for putting him in. But it just so happened, I think that the day after the meeting, he was in a bloody train and then he was getting up to all sorts.
Yeah,
So
I was sitting next to you. It's a joy sitting next to you at the Hall of Fame voting, Andrew. Gascoigne, Barnes, Hoddle's 3, Letizia 4, Chris Waddle 5. I mean, there is an argument, if somebody was sitting here like Hugh McDonald, he would say, Sir Stanley Matthews is easily in that top 5. It's all about generations.
Yes.
Anyway, you can agree or disagree. That was a right good noise, that wasn't it, Alison?
Yes.
How many times do you think you'll get Blazing Saddles in a Journos programme?
Or hair
Remember
transplant.
the
Yeah, or a hair transplant. Well done.
Gene Wilder says to the sheriff, "Don't worry about it," when,
Yeah.
when he's back in the station.
Yeah.
People of the land, common folk, you know, morons.
So that is the best line in the whole. But nevertheless, let's get off while we're still within the parameters of decency. Thanks to Gordon Parks, thanks to Andrew Smith, and to Alison McConnell. If you enjoyed the programme, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We'd love for you to join the football family. And also thank you to so many of you who downloaded the podcast as well and just listen to it while you're out walking the dog or just taking it easy, sitting in a chair somewhere. Thank you for your support from everyone here in the Journos. Thanks for listening and watching.